I never expected to be in that room again. Not after everything they said. Not after everything they didn't say when I needed them the most. But there was. A beige envelope slipped under my apartment door one damp morning. The kind of morning that already felt too heavy before I even opened my eyes. Leo, my 10-year-old, was eating cereal straight out of the box, swinging his legs on our squeaky kitchen chair. I picked up the envelope like it might bite me. Heavy stock paper. My name spelled out neatly in bold, uppercase print. Claire Evans. No warmth. No dear. No with love. Just cold ink. I opened it slowly, like peeling back a bandage you know is hiding something raw. You are requested to attend the reading of the will of James H. Evans, taking place on Saturday at 10 a.m. at the offices of Whitman and Green LLP. Presence required for acknowledgement of named beneficiaries. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper until it bent in my hands. James H. Evans. My father. My father who hadn't spoken to me in over 6 years. The man who once called me a waste of potential at Christmas dinner. In front of everyone. The same man who didn't come to the hospital the day Leo was born. Who never saw his grandson's first steps. Who never asked if we were okay. I guess we weren't what he wanted his family to look like. I wasn't. And still there it was. A formal invitation. No call. No message. Just a printed command, show up. Leo looked up at me with those wide, quiet eyes. What is it, Mom? I shook my head and slipped the letter into my pocket. Just something from Grandpa's lawyers. Grandpa died, right? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. Last month. Leo crunched his cereal, thoughtful. Will you go? I looked at him. This beautiful boy I'd raised alone. He didn't know the full story. Not yet. Not the insults. Not the judgments. Not the silence. He just knew that his mom's family didn't call on birthdays and that Christmas looked different for us than it did in the movies. I don't know, I said. But I did. I'd go. Because even if they wanted me erased, I needed to stand there and prove I wasn't. I owed that much to myself. I hadn't seen Bianca in years. But I recognized the click of her heels before I even walked into the office building. She was standing near the elevators talking to Uncle Gary. Her hair was flawless, shoulder-length and sharp like her words. She saw me and didn't even blink. Just gave a tight, polished smile and turned back to her conversation. No hello. No, how have you been? Just that look. The one that says you're still. Leo held my hand a little tighter. Inside the conference room it smelled like paper and expensive coffee. Heavy leather chairs lined a long table. A man in a dark suit, the lawyer, sat at the head shuffling papers like he wanted to disappear into them. I took the seat at the far end near the door. Bianca sat across from me, perfectly poised. Uncle Gary cracked his knuckles. My mother, yes, she was there too, dabbed at her eye with a tissue, though I didn't see a single tear fall. No one looked at me. Except Leo. Always Leo. He tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Are we supposed to talk?" I shook my head. No, baby. Just listen. Bianca leaned in, her voice loud enough to be heard. I assume this won't take long. We all know who's getting what. My stomach twisted. The lawyer glanced up. If everyone's ready, I'll begin. And then she said it. Loud. Careless. Pooh. She'll get nothing. Dad hated her. It didn't feel like a slap. Felt like being peeled open. Like someone had grabbed the worst part of your story and read it out loud. In a room full of people who were already halfway convinced you were the villain. Uncle Gary snorted. Even her kid knows she's worthless. The sound of that laughter, from my own flesh and blood, felt like ice poured down my back. I didn't cry. I didn't blink. But Leo heard it all. His hand slipped from mine. And that broke me more than the words. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout that they didn't know me. That I raised a boy who was kind and thoughtful and brilliant. That I worked 3 jobs to keep him clothed and safe and fed. That I didn't need their money. That I just wanted to matter. But I stayed silent. Because I knew they wouldn't hear me anyway. The lawyer began to read. Voice flat. Practiced. Legal names. Property listings. Technical jargon. Bianca smiled smugly as each asset was mentioned. The house, the investment accounts, the car. My name hadn't come up once. I could see the triumph in her eyes. Like she'd finally won some long-running game I never even agreed to play. Then something happened. Leo stood up. Just like that. He didn't look at me. He didn't ask. He just rose from his chair, small but unshaken, and looked at the lawyer. "Excuse me," he said. Bianca rolled her eyes. Oh God, now the kid thinks he's in a courtroom. But Leo didn't waver. "You forgot something," he said louder now. The room went still. The lawyer looked confused. "Excuse me. You forgot the video," Leo said. "Grandpa told me to tell you. The video he recorded before he died." Bianca laughed sharply. "Claire, really? You coached your kid too?" Leo turned to her. "No. He told me." "Not her." He said, "Leo, you're the only one I trust. Tell them to play the video." The lawyer blinked. Slowly, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small USB stick. He looked stunned. "There is a video file here." Bianca's mouth dropped. Uncle Gary leaned forward. The lawyer connected the USB to his laptop. The screen flickered to life. There he was. My father. In a hospital gown. Frail. But alert. "Hello," he began, his voice hoarse. "If you're watching this, I'm gone." "Good. Because I didn't want to be in that room when the knives came out." He looked straight into the camera. "I've made a lot of mistakes. But my biggest one was listening to people who only came around when they wanted something, and ignoring the one person who showed up when I deserved nothing." He took a breath. "Claire, if you're sitting there, I want you to know something. You were never a disappointment. I just didn't understand you. I judged you for choosing love over image. For having Leo. For doing it on your own. But you were brave. Braver than I ever was." I couldn't breathe. Leo reached for my hand again. The room was silent. Utterly, devastatingly silent. The video continued. My father was growing weaker, but his eyes still burned with clarity. "You gave me a second chance, Claire. You brought your son to see me. You forgave me. And I want the world to know that you're the reason I died with peace." He looked away for a moment, then back. "I'm leaving the house and my savings to Claire and Leo. Not because she needs it, she never did. But because I need to set something right." The screen went black. And the room fell even quieter. Silence. That's what I remember most. Not Bianca's gasp. Not Uncle Gary's muttered curse. Not even my mother's trembling hand as she reached for her purse like she suddenly remembered she had somewhere better to be. Just silence. The kind that fills your ears and chest and makes your heartbeat feel like thunder. I sat there, stunned. Frozen. Watching the black screen as if it might flicker back to life and offer some final proof that I didn't imagine it. That he'd really said those words. That he meant them. I glanced at Leo. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't smug. He just looked relieved. Like he knew something had been lifted. Something that had been pressing on both of us for far too long. The lawyer cleared his throat. Sounded loud, almost rude. But I could tell he was trying to break the tension gently. As per Mr. Evans's recorded testimony and documented signature," he said, "the contents of the estate will be transferred accordingly." He slid 2 thick envelopes across the table. One toward Bianca. One toward me. I didn't move. Not yet. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. That envelope held the weight of years. Not in dollars but in something far heavier. Acknowledgement. Closure. Something I never thought I'd get from that man. Bianca stood up so quickly her chair screeched back. She snatched her envelope, stared at it, then tossed it back on the table. "Bullshit," she hissed. "Complete bullshit." Her voice cracked. That was the first time I'd ever heard her sound anything but superior. She turned on the lawyer. "You knew. You all knew. You let me walk in here thinking I—" She stopped herself. Choked. Then spun on me. "You coached him. You manipulated that man." "I didn't," I said quietly. That froze her. Not because I'd said something powerful. But because I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just spoke. Calm. Honest. And finally no longer afraid. "I didn't know about the money," I said. "I didn't ask for anything. I didn't even want to come." I looked at Leo. "I just wanted my son to know where he came from." Bianca's lips curled into a sneer. "Don't play the martyr. You always act like you're better than us just because you're struggling. It's pathetic." "No," I said, still quiet. "Not better. Just done pretending." Uncle Gary stood up, his expression unreadable. He shoved his envelope into his coat pocket and muttered, "This family's gone to hell." Then he walked out. Just like that. My mother didn't say a word. Didn't look at me. Didn't look at Leo. She picked up her purse, gave a small nod to the lawyer, the same polite nod she'd give a cashier, and followed Bianca out the door. And then it was just us. Me, Leo, and a man I'd never met before today, who had somehow delivered the only words that ever mattered from my father's mouth. The lawyer finally looked at me, really looked at me. "I believe your father meant what he said," he said softly. "I think he regretted a lot," he added. "I saw him a few days before he passed. He looked tired. But when he talked about you and Leo, he lit up. I don't know what it was about that moment. Maybe it was the kindness. Maybe it was hearing from someone who didn't owe me anything, that I was loved. Maybe it was just the sheer weight of holding it together too long. But I started to cry. Not the loud, cinematic kind of crying. No sobs. No gasps. Just quiet tears that slipped down my cheeks and wouldn't stop. Leo leaned into me. His arms wrapped around my side. And he whispered, "You didn't need to win, Mom. But I'm glad you did." I laughed, even as tears kept falling. That boy had more strength in his pinky than most grown men. We walked out of that building hand in hand. Into the morning sun. And for the first time in years it didn't feel cold. It didn't feel like I was standing on the outside looking in. We were out. But we were whole. The house wasn't as big as I remembered. It had always seemed so grand when I was young, the way all childhood places do. But now, walking up the driveway with the keys in my hand, it just looked tired. Like it had been waiting. The paint had faded. The shutters leaned a little. But the garden still bloomed. The hydrangeas stood defiantly alive and purple, like nothing had ever gone wrong in this house. Leo ran ahead of me, backpack slung over one shoulder, already excited about choosing his new room. "This one's got the biggest window," he shouted. I stepped inside slowly, letting the air wrap around me. It smelled like old wood and dust and memory. I ran my fingers along the edge of the banister. It had been sanded smooth by decades of small hands. Mine included. And I let myself feel it. All of it. The anger. The sorrow. The complicated grief of a father who never got it right while he was living, but somehow still left behind something that tried to make it right. Later that night, Leo fell asleep in the same room I'd once called mine. Same creaky floorboards. Same uneven closet doors. He didn't care. He was happy. Safe. Home. I sat on the porch alone, watching the sky shift from pink to black, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold. And I finally let myself ask the question I'd buried for years. Was I really that unlovable? The answer didn't come in words. Came in moments. In Leo's laughter echoing through the hallway. In my father's worn voice on that video. In the key I held in my hand, not just to a house but to the truth. I wasn't unlovable. I was inconvenient. I was honest. I was strong in ways that made weak people uncomfortable. And that had scared them. All of them. But not Leo. Never Leo. He loved me when I had nothing. When the fridge was empty and my hands were cracked from cleaning jobs and I came home too tired to smile. He loved me through every moment I doubted myself. And when he stood up in that room full of judgmental strangers, he didn't do it because I told him to. He did it because he knew I deserved better. Because I had raised him to believe in truth. In kindness. In justice. In me. And I had done that without their money. Without their help. Without their damn approval. The next morning I walked into the living room and saw something on the fireplace mantel I hadn't noticed before. A photo frame. Buried behind dusty candles and old vases. I picked it up. It was me. Holding Leo as a baby. Sleeping in a hospital bed. Someone had taken that photo. And someone, my father, had kept it. And suddenly I realized, maybe he had been watching. Maybe he hadn't known how to say the words while he was alive. But he found a way before he left. Maybe that's enough. Maybe, finally, I can stop needing their permission to exist. To feel proud. To feel whole. Because I've already raised the greatest thing I'll ever create. A boy who knows how to love with courage. And that will always be my legacy. Not the house. Not the money. But him. You'd think after a moment like that, after a will reading where the dead spoke the truth and the living had no choice but to listen, that the noise would stop. But it didn't. People like Bianca don't know how to sit with silence. Especially not when it makes them look small. So she started talking. She told her version of the story. Spun it into something she could control. She manipulated him while he was dying. She guilt-tripped him into changing the will. She probably helped him record that video herself. At first I ignored it. I told myself the people who mattered wouldn't believe her. But the rumors grew louder. Bolder. A neighbor stopped waving when I passed by. Someone at the grocery store stared a little too long. I even got a message from an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, saying, "Hey, are you okay? People are saying weird things." And that's when I realized, if I didn't speak for myself, she'd write the ending for me. So I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I stood up. The local church, the one my parents dragged us to every Sunday, was hosting a memorial service for my father. Open to the family. Say something if you feel moved, the flyer said. Of course, Bianca was speaking. Leo and I sat in the back pew. My palms were sweaty. My stomach churned. I wasn't sure I'd go up. Until I heard her. Bianca stood at the front of the church like she was on a stage. Dressed in her designer black dress. Lipstick perfect. Eyes dry. He loved his family, she said. He valued strength, tradition, and resilience. And he always believed in holding people to high standards. She paused just long enough to let the crowd nod. And yes, she added, he could be harsh. But only because he wanted what was best. And that was it. The rewrite. The sanitized version. She was burying him in the same lie he spent his life trapped inside. So I stood up. I didn't plan it. My feet just moved. The church creaked as I stepped down the aisle. Everyone turned. Some looked confused. Others, uncomfortable. I reached the front. Took the microphone. My heart pounded. My name is Claire, I said. James Evans was my father. That alone felt like fire in my throat. I wasn't the perfect daughter, I said. I dropped out of college. I had a child on my own. I made choices he didn't agree with. And for a long time we barely spoke. I looked at Leo sitting alone in that pew. Watching me. Believing in me. He missed 10 of Leo's birthdays. He missed the day he was born. He missed my worst moments. And I carried that pain for years. I paused. The air was thick. No one moved. But in the end he showed up. He let me in. He apologized. And he recorded a video telling me something I never thought I'd hear. That he was proud of me. Some people shifted in their seats. Bianca was stone-faced. But I wasn't speaking for her. I wasn't speaking for any of them. I'm not here to fight over a will. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to tell the truth. That people can change. That forgiveness is real. That silence doesn't mean absence. And that sometimes, the ones who disappoint you the most, still love you in the end. I stepped away from the mic, sat back beside Leo. He leaned in and whispered, "You were amazing." And for the first time in my life I believed it. After the service, a woman I barely recognized approached me. Mrs. Adler. My old high school English teacher. She took my hand and said, "You grew into someone strong, Claire. I'm proud of you." That simple kindness hit harder than she probably realized. Because she was one of the last people who had ever believed in me before I fell apart. And now, all these years later, she saw me again, not as broken. Not as lost. But as someone whole. We hugged. And for a moment, the little girl in me who used to scribble poems in a spiral notebook felt safe again. On the drive home, Leo was quiet. Then he asked, "Do you think Aunt Bianca's mad?" I smiled. "Oh, definitely. Do you think she'll try to take the house?" "No," I said. "Because we're not afraid of her anymore." And we weren't. That night, I sat on the living room floor with a stack of old journals. Pages filled with scribbled pain, unanswered questions, and messy hope. So many entries ended with the same sentence, "I just want to be enough." I read them all. And then one by one I fed them into the fireplace. Not because those feelings weren't real. But because I didn't need to carry them anymore. They had shaped me, yes. But they didn't define me now. I was ready to write a new story. One that wasn't about shame or struggle. One that started from the truth, not the wound. I opened a fresh notebook. On the first page I wrote, "I am enough. I always was." And this time I meant it. The next few weeks were calm. Peaceful even. We settled into the house. Painted the kitchen together. Hung pictures. Bought second-hand furniture and laughed over crooked shelves. We were building something new. From scratch. And it didn't matter that it wasn't perfect. Sometimes the ghosts came back. A photo. A smell. A room that echoed more than it should. But I wasn't scared of them anymore. Because I knew I didn't have to live in the past to honor it. One afternoon, Leo came home with a school project. Write about someone who changed your life. He picked me. Asked why. He shrugged. Because you never gave up. Not on me. Not on yourself. That's all I need to know. And with those words, every scar on my heart softened. All the years I spent wondering if I mattered, if I'd ever be seen or respected or loved, melted into a quiet truth I never thought I'd hold. I didn't just survive my family. I became someone better because of it. Not bitter. Not angry. Just better. Because I let the pain teach me, not break me. Because I found strength in the one place no one ever bothered to look. Within. And because even when the world refused to clap for me, I clapped for myself. Leo and I sat on the porch that evening. The sky turned gold. The air smelled like rain. He leaned his head on my shoulder and said, "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I don't even remember what the old apartment looked like anymore." I smiled. "Me neither." We sat there in silence. Not the heavy kind. The healing kind. And I realized that for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't waiting for something bad to happen. I was just here. Alive. Home. And finally at peace. I thought once the dust settled, once the service was over and the lawyers had stopped calling, things might get quiet. But I forgot how hard it is for some people to let go of a story where they're the victim. Or the hero. Bianca wasn't done. She couldn't stand what had happened. Couldn't stomach the idea that Dad chose to leave everything to me and Leo. That he'd spoken the truth in front of everyone. And worst of all, that no one had interrupted him when he did. So she kept pushing her version. Whispered it to anyone who would listen. That I had manipulated him. That I had taken advantage of his dying state. That the video was rehearsed or edited or maybe not even real. Kept my head down. Let her talk. Because I knew the truth had already been said, out loud and on record. But the whispers, they found their way back. It started with a phone call from an old friend of the family. She sounded awkward. Like she didn't know why she was calling but felt like she should. "I'm just wondering how you're holding up. There's been a lot of noise." I thanked her. Told her we were fine. But after I hung up, I sat there staring at the wall, wondering how long Bianca would drag this out. It wasn't about the money. Not anymore. It was about control. She had lost it and she wanted it back. The next weekend I got a call from Pastor Ellis. He had officiated Dad's funeral. He said there was going to be a church potluck for the extended family and close friends. And he gently asked if I'd like to come. "I'd understand if you didn't," he said. "But I also think it might be good for people to see you. Hear from you." First I said no. Why would I go back into a room full of people who spent years treating me like I was invisible? But that night I looked at Leo asleep in his bed, the boy who stood up in front of all of them, and I realized something. He didn't get that courage from nowhere. He got it from watching me. And if I wanted to keep showing him what strength looked like, I couldn't stay small just to make others comfortable. So I said yes. We showed up that Sunday afternoon with a store-bought pie and our heads held high. The church hall smelled like coffee casseroles and something vaguely lemony. Folding chairs creaked beneath old neighbors. Aunts and uncles nodded politely. Some avoided eye contact. Bianca was already there. She was standing near the punch bowl, laughing with her friends like nothing had happened. She saw me and froze for just a second. Then the smile came back, wider, faker. She didn't come over. She didn't need to. I could feel her words in the room. In the way people looked at me and then quickly looked away. We made small talk. Took our seats. I helped Leo fix his plate. Sat down with him at a corner table. That's when Pastor Ellis walked up, microphone in hand. He tapped the mic gently. "I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I know James Evans was a complicated man to some and a hero to others. We've had a lot of strong feelings come up since his passing. And I think what we need now more than ever is grace." He looked out across the room. Then straight at me. "I'd like to invite Claire Evans to come up and say a few words if she's willing." Bianca stiffened. Her eyes narrowed. I stood up. Walked slowly to the front. I didn't feel nervous this time. I felt ready. "Hi," I said, my voice clear. "Most of you know me. Or I guess I should say you remember me. I'm Claire. James was my father." A few people nodded. One man, a former co-worker of Dad's, offered a gentle smile. "I know there's been a lot of talk lately. A lot of questions about the will. About the video. About why things turned out the way they did. I paused. Not because I needed to think, but because I wanted the weight of that silence to settle. I'm not here to defend myself, because I don't have to. I let that sit for a moment. I came today for the same reason I went to the will reading. For Leo. For my son. So he could see what it looks like to stand tall even when people want you to shrink. I looked around the room. Some faces were softening. Some still cold. But they were listening. I didn't steal anything. I didn't beg. I didn't manipulate. I showed up. I forgave my father while he was still alive. I visited him when no one else did. And when he asked me not to let Bianca or anyone else speak for him after he was gone, I listened. I looked at Bianca now. Straight on. I don't need you to like me. But I won't let you erase me. I turned back to the crowd. People change. Stories shift. But the truth stays. And the truth is, I survived this family. I survived the shame, the silence, the judgment. And I raised a good boy all on my own. That's something worth being proud of. I nodded. Walked back to my seat. Leo reached out and grabbed my hand. You were brave, he whispered. And I was. Pastor Ellis stepped back up. Thank you, Claire. That was honest. And I think James would have appreciated it. A few people clapped. Some didn't. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life I had spoken my story while people listened, and I didn't ask for their permission to tell it. That evening I got a message from one of my cousins. The same cousin who used to call me the screw-up behind my back. She wrote, I didn't know half of what you've been through. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I didn't respond. But I smiled. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's a quiet walk out of a loud room. When I tucked Leo in that night, he asked, Do you think Grandpa would be proud of you now? I thought about it. I think he finally was. In the end. And then Leo said something that will live with me forever. I'm proud of you now. That was all I needed. Because I didn't do this for money. Or revenge. Or closure from the people who never cared enough to offer it. I did it for him. For me. For the part of myself I used to hide just to make everyone else comfortable. And that part. She's not hiding anymore. Some endings don't look like endings at all. They look like quiet mornings. They sound like kids laughing in the backyard. They feel like walking into a room you were once unwelcome in and realizing you're no longer afraid. That's how it's been for me lately. No explosions. No dramatic final words. Just peace. I thought for years that I would need a big moment. A reckoning. That one day they would all line up and apologize. That they'd see how wrong they were about me. But I've learned something. The people who go quiet when you speak your truth aren't looking to understand. They're hoping you'll shut up again. And I won't. I've found power in my own voice. Not the kind that needs to scream. The kind that doesn't need permission. Bianca hasn't spoken to me since the potluck. A few people from the family reached out here and there, soft messages dripping with pretend curiosity. But I don't reply anymore. I'm done offering access to people who only come around to take. My life now. It's not perfect. We still have bills. The water heater's temperamental. The garden needs weeding. But it's mine. Ours. Leo started drawing little comics of our life. He made one where I'm wearing a superhero cape and fighting off family gossip monsters, with a giant ladle in one hand and a rent receipt in the other. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. He's brilliant. Every time I look at him, I see the version of myself I used to pray could exist. Strong. Unapologetic. Free. One Saturday while we were sorting old boxes from the attic, Leo found a dusty VHS tape. It was unlabeled. We took it downstairs, dug out the old player I swore I'd throw away years ago and popped it in. It was a home video. Me. Christmas morning. I couldn't have been older than 10. My dad was behind the camera. Claire, show me what you got, he said. I held up a book. Smiled. Shy but glowing. He laughed. That's my reader. Always in the corner with her nose in a story. It hit me hard. That for all his flaws there had been moments where he saw me. Maybe not enough. Maybe too late. But it was something. Leo nudged me. See? He noticed. I guess he did, I said. And that's how healing comes sometimes. In pieces. Not a flood. Not a breakthrough. Just a quiet frame on an old VHS tape. I stopped needing to be understood. I started needing to be whole. Every now and then I get questions from people, friends, coworkers, even strangers. How did you get through it? What would you say to someone who's been cut off, pushed out, told they were never enough? And I always say the same thing. Don't spend your life proving you deserve love from people who are allergic to growth. You are not a mistake because they couldn't see your worth. You are not broken because you didn't meet their expectations. And you sure as hell are not worthless because you did the hard thing, chose yourself. Took me years to figure that out. And if this story helps even one other woman, one other mother sitting alone on a couch with a baby in her arms and shame on her shoulders, feel like she's not alone, then it was all worth it. The truth is, I didn't win anything. There was no prize for surviving the family that failed to love me right. But I did choose peace. And that's more powerful than any inheritance. Leo and I still sit on the porch some nights. We count stars. Talk about school. Dream big. He wants to be a writer now. Says he wants to tell the truth like mom does. And every time he says it, I feel this rush of pride. Not because he wants to be like me, but because I know what it took for him to see me as someone worth becoming. I don't regret a single tear. Not one sleepless night. Not one hard year. Because they shaped a version of me I never thought I'd get to be. The kind who stands in her own story without flinching. The kind who doesn't whisper anymore. The kind who writes her ending in bold. Thank you for listening to my story. If any part of it felt familiar, if you've ever been pushed aside, talked down to, or made to feel like you weren't enough, know this. You are more than what they said. You are more than what they failed to see. And your story isn't over yet. If this moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose yourself, even when no one else did? Subscribe if you want more stories that speak the truth, the kind people are afraid to say out loud. And remember, you don't need their validation to take up space. You already belong. Exactly as you are.